As you can see from the program here, we're going to be in the theater until approximately 5, although we have until 5:30 to get out. We do need to be out by 5:30, but the intention is now, if you've got something you'd like to say, or if we've invited you to play some music, we're going to stay and just share information, stories, and music until the time for us to leave. And then we're going to head over to Blue Line Gallery. We've got enough food there for 50 people, so I hope you've got an appetite and you will join us over at the Blue Line Gallery immediately after we leave the theater. It's on 4th Street between College and Morton on the north side of 4th Street. And it's very easy to find, easy walking distance from here. But now we will start with some music and reflections. But I did want to, before we turn it over to our first musical performance, read something from Hildegard Keller, the woman who made the movie. She couldn't be here with us. She's in either Argentina or Switzerland. I'm not sure. She's a world traveler. But she says, she sent this for me to read today. And it says, I'll never forget the day when I first set foot in Annemarie's kitchen and heard her speculate whether she would ever die and who of the two, Leah or Annemarie herself, would be the first to go. It's actually a blessing that Annemarie went before Leah, because if Leah had died before Annemarie, I don't think she could have lived another week. I'll never forget how Annemarie once again became a young girl as my film crew entered the same kitchen. 3 young men, one more handsome than the next. Wonderful receptivity for smashing effects she had. Parenthesis, of course, I had to be strict. No party at 10 a.m., no wine for my men before work was done. I didn't like that role, but I'm glad we got the film made. I'll never forget how Annemarie called me 5 times a day. She'd found still more photos, letters, journals, texts, simply stuff from her life. Of course, I had to come immediately. Frau Professor had time to play her research assistant and to bike over from South Park Avenue to her house. I'll never forget how she left us alone, Carter and me, on Cape Cod, but that also gave us freedom with the film, and I'm grateful for that. I'll never forget Annemarie's effect on the screen. People in the USA, Switzerland, Austria, and Germany left the cinema fortified and with a smile in their hearts. I'll never forget my last visit with her. She sat with friends having wine and something to nibble, was happy and was more attentive, although she'd lost her appetite for chocolate. My friends tell me you're a fabulous filmmaker. I said to her, goodbye, Annemarie. I leave the country for good. New horizons are waiting. First, Argentina. And then on the day of my departure, the phone call from Lieslot. The very last call on my American telephone. Annemarie had passed away an hour ago. I thought you need to know that. An hour later, I closed my door for good. We who had changed each other's lives left America on the very same morning. Sorry, guys. Whatever comes next for you, dear Annemarie, may delight you. Send us peace and inspiration from the other world. We'll continue to pay back with art and labor of love. So that's from Hildegard. And now, Brad Leftwich and Linda Higginbotham.
Hi, everybody.
And Tony Mahler will be next after Brad and Linda.
Okay. Well, it's been 45 years since I met Andy and Barbara. I don't know if she's here. Oh, there she is. And I met Annemarie soon after that. And I was going to say we're about 3 years old, but we just acted like we were 3 years old back then. And we had lots of fun. And this is a song that I actually learned right about that time. It's a Doc Watson, Rosalie Watson song that Andy's asked us to sing. It's called Your Long Journey. And I think a lot of you probably know it. It's on a real famous Doc Watson album. And Rosalie wrote the words imagining what it was like when one of them would die and the other one had to go on and saying goodbye. And that's going to be hard for not just with Annemarie, but with everybody. All of us have known each other for so long. And when I met Annemarie, she was, of course, she's somebody, she was a much more glamorous mother than my mother, of course, and beautiful, intelligent, way smarter than my mother, creative, not more social. Nobody's more social than my mother. But she was so powerful, and I always admired her. There's no way not to meet her, not to admire her. And wherever she is, I know she's still powerful, and she's on a journey ahead of us. And so we would like some help singing this song. It's called Your Long Journey, and it's a way of saying goodbye to Annemarie.
God's given us years of happiness here, now we must part. And as the angels come and call for you, the pangs of grief tug at my heart. Oh, my darling, my darling, my heart breaks as you take your long journey. Oh, the days will be empty, the night so long without you, my love. And as God calls for you, I'm left alone, but we will meet in heaven above. Oh, my darling, my darling, my heart breaks as you take your long journey. Fond memories I'll keep of happy ways that on earth we trod. And when I come, we will walk hand in hand as one in heaven in the family of God. Oh, my darling, my darling, my heart breaks as you take your long journey.
I'm Tony Mahler, and actually our MC, who apparently needs no introduction, is my brother Andy. But I assume he's the one person that everybody here knows, because everybody knows Andy. And I left Bloomington 50 years ago, and probably have only been back, a couple of dozen times since. So it's a little different for me. Coming to this and seeing all of you, it reminds me. My mother was a very strong personality. She was somebody who people tended to remember. I obviously remember her well. And I think that film did a really nice job of kind of capturing my mother as a real individual, a person, a survivor, somebody who existed on her own terms, not defined by others. I thought, rewatching the film, and I've seen it a couple times before, always struck by the fact that she didn't really actually talk about her children in a story of her life. She did mention that she had her husband's children. And I always felt that in some way, although she was very close to all three of us, in her own way, that it was very important to her that we be individuals, that we not be defined by her, or that she not be defined by us. And so I will always remember her as an individual, as a survivor who went through many, many difficult times, much more difficult than anything I can imagine having lived through. But she came out of it as a person and as the person she wanted to be, and that's how I'll always remember her. Thanks.
As I was looking through the closet trying to figure out what I was going to wear, I saw this item that's been in there for 35 years maybe. When my father died, my mom gave this jacket to me. It was something he got in India, and I figured this is probably the only occasion I'll ever be able to wear this jacket, so it's pretty sharp. We're now going to ask Ernest Bernard to speak and say a few words. And after that, it will be a Gray Larson, if you would want to get ready, Gray.
Dear Annemarie, it's Ernest. Wanting, after listening to you now again, to talk to you once more, as we have talked for some 50 years. Ever since that party half a century ago when you suddenly sat down next to me on the hearthstone of a fireplace and started to talk about your life. We've talked ever since, at chance meetings, parties, and other gatherings, at each other's homes, and then for years at the weekly potluck get-togethers on Wednesday evenings at your house with your gracious hospitality. Talked about art and music, books and politics and events, about your writings, your paintings, about cooking, and as we got older, inevitably also about matters of health and bodily ailments, what you wittily called our organ recitals. As in fact we did over a glass of wine only 5 days before you suddenly fell silent. And sometimes, just for fun, we would speak German together, the Austrian way, you with your Viennese accent, and I with my Tyrolean one, acquired as a child when I lived in the Alps. In the course of these exchanges, I also found out about the many curious parallels between your life and that of my wife, Eva, born the same year, just 3 months apart, both being Jewish descent and thus having to come to America to escape from Nazi persecution. Growing up in New York, where Eva attended Hunter High School and you, somewhat later, Hunter College. Going to school and getting married in Berkeley, and each having 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter. And finally meeting in Bloomington, and there eventually earning a PhD at a somewhat advanced age, and having an all too short academic career. You even passed away within weeks of each other, as my beloved Eva suddenly died just 4 days ago. Thank you, Annemarie, for all those years of conversations and congeniality and the sense of common background and common interests. Rest well in your newfound silence.
I'm going to be joined by Cindy Callett playing the guitar. We are going to play a very old piece of music from Ireland. It's called Give Me Your Hand. It was written by an Irish harper named Rory Dahl O'Cahan, who lived from about 1550 to 1640. So give me your hand.
Close enough. Thank you, Gray and Cindy. Amazing. Beautiful. I'm Annemarie's nephew, Mark, one of the New Yorkers. And I'm, at this moment, going to read a letter from my father, her only brother, and David Weirhake. It will be preparing himself to present after me. Thomas Ettinger, my father, couldn't be here, and he writes, "Sad not to be able to be here, too old, frail for making such a trip." Annemarie was a survivor, indeed what we escaped from, to 91. Born in Vienna on April 8th, 1926, as a child she painfully lived through the horrors of the growing Nazification there until we finally all had to flee for our lives. So, with the family split up for its fleeing, she came alone to America in a kinder transport, set up for extricating, saving Jewish-identified children before what was to come. From earliest childhood, Annie loved to draw and paint, and her love for her art craft survived her through those early terrifying days and was the ongoing meaningfulness of her life through to the end. And it is wonderful that we have examples of her decades of such creativity as leftover mementos to enshrine her existence. I was 11 years younger, and she gave up a lot of her later childhood energies to look out for me, her younger brother, hardly what a growing adolescent girl needed, to protect me from those leftover family scars of the Nazi era. I am eternally grateful to her, beyond what words can express. I don't know how much I could have survived all that hovering anxiety without her such love and selfless care. In how she was herself a survivor, she also so momentously helped me survive. So thank you, my beloved sister, for so lovingly having helped me survive the leftover terrors of where we were born. And for the rest of my life, I can see your early self-portrait hanging on the wall here as a reminder of our sibling love.
See, there is a DI up here, but so I met Andy back in the late 70s, and be a mutual friend, and then got to know his mother. And I must say that I'm lucky enough to have one of her pen and ink watercolors that hangs over my dining room table, and I'm not sure why I was attracted to this piece. I think I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm not quite sure what the collaboration she had with the artistic spirit she worked with all the time, but I marvel at that I wanted to have that piece. I don't think there's a dog in it, though. So I'm gonna play one I wrote, if I can get my foot from stop shaking, about 5 years ago. Like a little monitor guitar. wake up at the place we said goodbye. I'd catch you up on all my tales, wander down familiar trails, pass time just like we did before. If I could have you from start to finish, I'd shower your day with love, each passing minute a blessing from above. I'd be right in it, wouldn't vanish in thin air. Yes, I'd live each day as if it were my last, my last. If I could have you back. Passing minutes, a blessing from above. I'd be right in it, wouldn't vanish in thin air. Yes, I'd live each day as if it were my last, my last. If I could have you back, sing old songs, just chime right in, make up stories but never tell a lie. I'd fill your pockets with coins of luck, sure to win, I'd bet a buck. Pick my favorite, cross the finish line. If I could have you back again, mother dear, back again. My father here, back again. Wayward daughter, missing son, sister, brother, a lover, friend, you and me. Back again. Thank you.
We didn't really have a script or a plan for who was going to go. We sort of knew who would go the first few, but after that, I'd just like to invite maybe Sabine or Lieslot or somebody, if one of you would like to share some thoughts, or Amy, but we would like to have one of Annemarie's close friends from the Bloomington area, if anybody would like to say some words. Sabine, you want to come on up? Sure. And then maybe the Sacred Harp Singers would like to get ready. They'll be next and maybe do 2 songs.
I remember your mother. Having known Annemarie through our friendship and long-lasting Thirsty Art Group, including numerous visits in Woods Hall, I remember our last get-together in her living room here in Bloomington. We were drinking white wine and eating a butterbrot, which she loved to eat. I remember her saying, "We need to eat a lot of butter, it's good for the brain." She was resting on her sofa, of course, her dog Leah next to her at her feet. As she once proclaimed, With a twinkle in her eyes, dogs, my most loyal companions, bursting out with robust laughter. I remember that on the day she needed to rest, and while we talked, her eyes were blue as a clear sky on a summer morning in her beloved Woods Hole. We looked at each other, and then she stared into the far distance. Yes, we talked about life's beginning and life's ending, about the essence of what lies between these poles: birth in Vienna, survival in America, resilience in everything she was striving for, longing for love, companionship, also pain, loneliness, and endurance were part of it. Annemarie experienced all of it in the 91 years of her life. Once we talked about a small poem and its meaning, quote, "Be the grass, grow back when you're trod upon," end of quote. I remember her unabashedly shouting out loud, "Hell yes," as she often loved to say. One gets up and one goes on. It was her life's mantra. Hell yes, hell no. That's how she at times emphasized some of her strong opinions, in private and in public. Even though deep in her heart she was as soft as butter, she was a strong woman. She was funny and witty, her intellect sharp to a point. Annemarie let her roaring spirit dwell in her art, in drawings, in paintings and in writings, and in her family of her children, Tony, Barbara, Andy, and extended family. Her life story was a courageous search for an inner home and to never, never give up when life challenged her in very, very harsh ways. She was pushing for answer to her life's questions. Her academic work, painted images, were the answer to her questions. Annemarie was a great friend, a tender friend, brilliant, bold and outspoken. I'm grateful to have known her, your mother. This time I'm saying, hell yes, I miss her.
Rises to my soul. I'm going to come up before I lose my nerve. I knew Annemarie as part of an art group that was some wonderful women that came together to speak about art. And then as things go, life came in and we spoke about life a lot. So this is what I wrote for Annemarie. For Annemarie Mahler, you were an artist, true and deep. You loved light and image and space and time and color. You went beyond all that into the simple poetry of painting, stepping off into the unknown and unknowable. You wore your life within you and somehow managed to travel light. You never let anyone take the wheel, and you turned your car towards big horizons. You tore your passport. You gathered your friends together around your table. You were tender-hearted. You were as difficult as diamonds. You were beautiful always. You were brilliant forever. By some miracle, excuse me, my life crossed the path of your life. You were my friend. So long, dear friend. So long, it's been good to know you. So long, it's been good to know you. This crazy old world just keeps turning around, and we've got to keep traveling on. A bientôt, Annemarie. Your pal, Amy Campbell.
I'm Barbara. Some of you may have wondered, who is Barbara anyway? Sometimes salespeople would call the house, and I felt sorry for them when my mother answered the phone, because she could curse like a sailor. She didn't like it when they called, and she had many sides. And I've thought a lot about what I would like to speak about. And Andy and I were speaking one day when she was approaching death, and we each have our own origin story, unique origin story. And when my mother was 3 months pregnant with me, she had a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old, and her husband was diagnosed with testicular cancer. And she started to miscarry me. And some people would have been terribly sad, but with the circumstances, wouldn't have fought to keep a third child with no way to make a living. But she fought for my survival and took medication, and so I got to be here. And her husband had a 98% chance of dying, and he did too survive. And the reason we ended up in Indiana was because they had the best death benefits of any university that had offered my father a job. And of course, she fell in love with the city, and it was where we grew up. And she sort of scoffs in the movie about her children, but the truth is she was fierce about protecting us. And even though also she had a fierce intellect, part of the reason that she was so driven to get her PhD was to be sure that she would be able to take care of us. And one day when she was visiting me in Colorado, she went skiing. And the last time she had skied in Austria, she had certainly skied since then, but the last time as a child was on that train ride when a teacher came and took the yellow star off her chest. And she never forgot that teacher to protect her from the Nazis who came on the train. And she stood at the top of that mountain, and she realized that her children were safe, and she just let go and skied down that mountain like she never had. She was free, and she didn't have to worry about dying so that her children would not be okay. So she was a fierce mother, even though she doesn't really admit it in the movie. We had a lot of difficulties between us. We're both strong in very different ways. And my whole life has been about being a healer and about the spirit. And of course, my mom touched the spirit through her art, and I touched the spirit in different ways. But I did get to be with her when she was dying. We all were, all three children, her dog and Andy's dog, on that same bed that we saw in the movie. I was curled up on one side of her and Andy on the other. Andy's dog was at my feet, and Leia was on the floor, and Tony was in a chair. But when she first started dying, she said, "This is the worst day of my life," and as only mom would, And then she was terribly anxious, and she didn't want any medication. She refused all of it. And I said to her, "Drop down into your heart and feel your breath. That's the handhold that will take you where you need to go." And she just did it. It was like she knew. She trusted me. It meant so much to me, because my whole life has been about my inner life. And it was hard for her to understand, because we just chose such different paths. And all night, she would reach over to see if I was still there, to make sure I was still there, and just touch me. And in the end, Mom's final words, she kind of sat up, almost like just trying to get the words out. And she was leaned against Andy like a birth. It was like a birth. It was exactly like a birth, just that panting. And she said, "Love, love, love, love." And it was so beautiful. And honestly, I haven't cried till now. I don't know why. I just felt her, like I just felt her. And the other day, I don't know where I was just feeling so much love, and I just felt her, because when she died, I felt like she just left. She was just ready. It was okay. She just left. And then the other day, I felt her, and I heard her say, "Don't worry, I'm taking care of you." And that fierceness I carry that in my heart. You know, I wrote something a while ago, right after she died, because I love to eat butter. And so did my mom. I mean, she would take a cheese slicer and just slice off butter, you know, and I don't even bother with a cheese slicer. I just cut off a hunk and, you know, just eat it. It's like, you know, just eat it. If you're going to put that much on your bread, you might as well just eat it. And there's just all these ways that I carry her with me, and I don't feel like she's gone. You know, that in each of us, there's something of her, not just in her children, because she adopted lots of people in her life. I remember when I was a teenager, kind of a hippie, and we had a friend who, she decided to become pregnant, really wanted a baby. And my mother paid for all of her maternal care. She just did stuff like that. She didn't make a big show of it. She just took care of people, the same way that she took care of her little brother. She did that through her whole life, just quietly, you know, someone who touched her heart or was in need. She had a very generous heart, and I'm really grateful. I feel like, you know, people may not know this, but those wounds really left her, they would sort of crack open and leave her with tremendous fear and anxiety, but she lived anyway. She didn't let it stop her. I mean, the last time I rode in a car with her, I was terrified. It was at a point really, she knew she was almost done driving, and it was coming back from Andy's, and I kept asking her to pull over, and she wouldn't. And then when we got home, she just was like, I know, it was, I just had to do it. I just had to do it. I had to know that I could still do it. She just was so determined to live, even though she had fear. She didn't curl up and die. She just wanted to completely embrace life, and she was a tremendous inspiration in that way. So I am very grateful. I'm very grateful to know that she had such dear friends who loved her, that she loved so much. You know, that's a real treasure, and that was a real gift, mutually. So thank you all. Thank you for taking such good care of her. And really, I think you know, there are strange things happening in our world right now, and we really need to stand up and recognize what that does to people. It's not okay to hate. It's not okay to hate people because they're Jewish, or because they're black, or because they're from Asia, or whatever. Really, her final words were love, and I want to carry that into the world however I can, because it's very, very important that we stand up against hate. And that stuff was hard for my mom in the end of her life, seeing that things happening like that. And I just really am so grateful, and thank you. Thank you for listening.
We put together a little medley. This is Queen of the Earth, Child of the Stars, and Yelling in the Shoats.
It's, I remember I went to a funeral of a friend of mine down in Orange County. There are a couple stories related to that I'd like to mention while Robin, are you guys? What is there? I'm just going to say a couple things while you guys get touch with it. I went to a funeral down in Orange County. I've written a song about one of my neighbors. And at the funeral, there wasn't really any time where they invited people to say anything. Usually it's just they talk about the hereafter. They don't really talk about the person who died. They just talk about sort of Christian tradition and biblical texts, and maybe sing a couple of hymns, and then they talk about Jesus. And the person who died, the family's there, they don't even talk about the person, and that always disturbs me a great deal. Because this is the time to talk about that person. And I had written a song about this, my neighbor, but I didn't say, I want to sing this song. I've regretted it ever since. So I'm just saying that by way of encouraging you to, if you've got anything in your heart that you'd like to say, now is the time. And there was another time, too, where they did actually invite people to come up and say something. I remember the preacher was up in front, he said, does anybody want to say anything? And I saw this woman next to me, she started giving, and said, okay, well, in that case, we'll go on to the next thing. She was just standing up, getting ready to walk up there. So, find the courage. Remember Annemarie. We've got a couple people going to speak now. Tom Sparks, if you're in the house, I would love to have you come and play a tune or two after Robin and Ingrid. Robin and Ingrid.
Hi, my name's Ingrid, and we became familiar with Annemarie probably about maybe 3 years ago or so. She was walking with Leah. We are neighbors, so she was walking down Ruby Street, and my partner Robin tends to be much more of an extrovert than I am, and of course she started talking with Annemarie, and Annemarie said, oh, come on over for some wine. And then she goes, I'm not trying to sell you anything. And I found out that this woman, first of all, she's a painter or an artist, and I majored in painting at IU, and when we visited her, her house just had all these incredible paintings, and I was just mesmerized by her work, and later when I got to know her better, her stories were just incredible. In terms of she is just a fantastic storyteller. She would get so excited, and it was just a pleasure to always visit her. So we kind of made it a weekly thing at least to stop by, to take out at least her trash. She did complain about her shoulder, and in terms of being so incredibly independent, she had ordered, I think there were like 3 incredibly large canvases, and she was really excited about starting this new body of work. And I guess when she got them in her home, she was so discouraged because I guess they were like on really super heavy duty stretcher bars, and she found out that she couldn't actually move them. And I said, well, I can come and help you, rotate them when you need. And she goes, well, that kind of takes away the purpose of, being able to do this by myself. So I ended up actually making her a set of new large stretcher bars and canvases that she could actually, work on, and she was really excited. And even despite her pain, she always found a way to kind of, paint, whether, she, did something or, put it on a table. And she was just incredible. I loved her. I loved her dearly. She just was funny. My mom's friend from Denmark came to visit us, and she used to own a gallery, and so I thought, well, this would be perfect. Why don't I introduce her to Annemarie, who was this fantastic artist. And Annemarie would be like, she would just say the funniest things like, well, if I wanted to make money, I would have been a hooker. I mean, she just said these amazing things, and she always made me laugh, and she just was this incredible woman. So I have such wonderful memories of her. My only regret is I'm sorry I was not here when everything happened, but I did try to call and find out what was going on. But anyways, I love you, Annemarie, wherever you are, and you will always be in my heart. So thank you very much.
I won't speak probably as eloquently as Ingrid, but I'm Robin, and I'm the other half of this partnership and Annemarie's neighbor. And I want to start with saying, yes, we did go over weekly and many times more than that, but particularly we would make sure that we could take her trash out for her on Mondays. And I would go over, one time she had a lot of trash, so I pulled in the drive, and she stops, she comes to the door, no, don't pull in the drive. I said, Annemarie, it's me, I'm taking your trash. And she goes, I don't care, park out at the road. I want you to carry my trash to the road. So she was just she had so much humor, and we loved that. And when she would do that, we would give it right back to her. So, but what I do want to say is I look in this room and I see all of you lovely people, and I know that every one of you touched her life in some way. And it kept her doing what she did best. And, you know, in the movie, she doesn't speak much about you lovely children of hers, but at home, when we would sit with her, drinking her Monkey Bay white wine, she would talk endlessly about the three of you and tell stories and talk about how different you are and were and how different you've become and how did she do okay and do we think that she's an okay mother and how could I have been better, and we just listened to so many stories, like Ingrid said, about her painting. So although we didn't know her as long as many of you did, she touched our lives deeply. As someone has mentioned numerous times, she was a force, and she will continue to be a force in our lives, and we're so grateful that we had the opportunity. So thanks for letting us share this.
Tom? Arthur, would you?
Hi, I'm Karen Bush Watts. I was a graduate student of Henry's from 1965 to 1970. During that time, Henry had one party for his graduate students. During that time, I think you were all in high school or about high school age. I was not super excited about going to Henry's house because Henry was known to be quite a Germanic type professor. And when I got to the house, what really struck me was that Annemarie started talking to me. I spent the whole party talking to Annemarie. She told me her life history. She told me what she was doing. She said she had children in high school. She did talk about you. She talked about going back and getting a PhD. That meant a lot to me because at that time, I was the only female PhD student that Henry had. And I didn't always feel super encouraged. But I got my degree. I left Bloomington in 1970, and we came back in 2008. And I reconnected with Annemarie. I met her at a faculty drama club that was being held at her house. She didn't quite remember me. She kind of thought she did. I remembered her very well and told her that she had been an inspiration to me. I didn't know many female PhD candidates who had been successful. I knew that she went on to get her degree. She couldn't teach at IU because IU had tenure law or had faculty employment laws, nepotism laws, that would not allow a husband and wife to be on the faculty at the same time. But when I came back, she started talking to me again and telling me the rest of the story that I didn't know about when I was here in 1970. And she asked me if I had seen the portrait that she had painted of Henry. And I said, no. She said, well, go in and look over the fireplace. And I came back with a smile on my face. She said, did you recognize him? And I said, yes. That was the picture of the bear. And I smiled. I said, you know, I was really scared to death of him. And she smiled and she said, you were supposed to be. But then we kept on talking, and it was clear that she had had her own life, a very successful life, and one that I came to realize why she had inspired me when I was a grad student, because there was so much to her that was more than just being a faculty wife. And I so much cherish the friendship that we had.
There's a song, not quite as old as Annemarie was when she passed, and it's from Irving Berlin. Nothing profound, I assure you. The way is long, the night is dark, but I don't mind, for a happy lark will be singing at the end of the road. I must go right, I must go right, I'll find my way, for a guiding light will be shining at the end of the road. There may be thorns in my path, still I'll wear a smile, for in a little while my path will be roses. Rain may fall from up above, I won't mind, for the ones I love will be waiting at the end of the road. There may be thorns in my path, still I'll wear a smile, for in a little while my path will be roses. You know that rain may fall from up above, but I won't mind, for the ones I love will be waiting at the end of the road.
I'm sorry, I don't have a prepared speech or anything, so I just talk ad hoc. And I want to say how much we appreciate seeing this testimony of Annemarie's incredible talent as an artist and her intellect, and having heard so much about her life. My husband and I, John, we have been friends with her for many years. John and Henry were colleagues in the chemistry department, so that was about 47 years ago when we came. And we have become very good friends. And I just wanted to say, too, how impressed we were always with Annemarie, how she was, as other people pointed out, to a very tender person. She had a lot of pride, and she wanted to be treated with respect. But she also treated other people with a lot of respect. And when she felt she had hurt somebody's feelings, she would just be devastated And I remember once she came to our house and she thought she had hurt somebody's feelings and she couldn't even eat dinner. She was so upset about it. And Annemarie and we spent a lot of time together. Many of the holidays, Christmas, New Year's, Thanksgiving, and we just became like family. And she was just such a wonderful friend. And we've learned so much from her. And as was pointed out many times, she always talked about her children, how proud she was of her children, how you, Tony, took care of your younger siblings, and how wonderful times she had with Barbara. And of course, she was very close to Andy, and we're lucky enough to get to know Andy quite well on several of the visits. She was also so happy always to come down to Paoli and got to really appreciate the community down there. And I think that was a really good outlet for her because it gave her the view into another kind of life, very different from the life she had grown up with, very different from the life here in Bloomington too. We will always miss Annemarie. She was a wonderful friend, and we were part of this group who met at her house on Wednesday evenings. It was always so interesting hearing her talk, and she instigated so many great conversations. She was such a well-read and well-traveled woman that it really was just a big privilege to be her friend, and we will always miss her. I also wanted to just point out, we saw this great documentary that Hildegard did. That wasn't easy for Annemarie. It brought back all her sensitivity, how it was for her to go back on this very difficult journey was really, really hard. I remember her blood pressure would go up, she got almost sick, and it showed how she took everything very, very seriously. And it was, again, to her credit, to show, to see how sensitive she was about everything. But in every respect, she was a really, really great woman, and we'll always miss her. We will always be very grateful to everything she had taught us. Thank you.
Well, hi, my name's Maggie. I don't like public speaking. I had the honor of taking care of Annemarie at the end of her life, and I wasn't going to cry. Annemarie was feisty. I knew her earlier through Andy at the Black Bear. I'm sort of family and sort of friend, and I'm a nurse, so Andy asked me to come into her house, and originally the plan was to be there 1 hour twice a week. And several weeks into the situation, I sat down with Annemarie and said, Annemarie, I just want you to know that I've been here 32 hours this week. And she loved company, and I got to see her at such a raw time in her life. It was very unique, and I feel very, very honored to have seen that. And I've heard so many stories about so many of you through her at that time. And so I guess today I just want to say that she was so feisty and so particular and yet so graceful. In the same evening, I would be reprimanded for getting the wrong hairbrush, for example, because, she would say, what kind of hairbrush do you use? She'd say, a hairbrush, like back to the time of the Romans. And I would go, that's not what I use. So I would get reprimanded, and at the same time, she had such an ability to share gratitude. And I remember many conversations with Andy saying, Andy, I I need help. I need help to support her. But at the same time, she's so easy to take care of because she's so grateful. And so the takeaway for me as a healthcare provider and as an individual is not only that gratitude is so important. It's so much easier to take care of someone who recognizes that I'm getting up at 3:30 in the morning to come and sleep by you and say thank you. But also, she loved all of you and the visits that you made to her late in life. And sometimes she had stories to share and sometimes she didn't. But every visit was important. And death and dying is very important to me as a nurse, and in this culture it's very difficult to do that with grace. And she did. She died with such beauty. And Barbara compared it to birth. And for me, I've been to many home births, and I've been to a handful of home deaths, and they're very similar. And I feel so grateful to have been a part of her home death and to have seen the grace with which she approached death and her children accepted it. And she has created such beauty in her life and her work and in her death. And so I guess I invite everyone to sort of rethink death and supporting the older people in our community and making sure to visit them even when they don't have beauty and stories to share actively. It's so important, and it's hard to die with grace, and she did. So I'm grateful, and thank you.
This is a really complicated day. Annemarie, I got to know after I got to know her children because I'm the youngest in that generation. There were only 2 siblings in that family, Annemarie and Tom, my dad. But we grew up in New York. We never left. My dad never left. Annemarie was the one who got away, the one who became an artist. And I was the one who became an artist in my family. And although I didn't know her well, for many years, I felt a resonance and a kinship. And I saw on everybody's walls paintings which I felt maybe a lot of the people who hung them didn't understand so well. But I looked in them and I saw the themes of life that you see in front of you. And her strength and her resolve to make art as a way of translating the impossibility of existence into something like redemption, without regard for the pettiness of the art world, which is on full display in New York, I became a musician, and one can go insane trying to figure out how to become famous as a musician, and the only thing that's guaranteed is that you'll probably lose your spark of inspiration and you'll lose your authentic voice on the way. And if ever there was an authentic voice that was not trying to impress anybody, but along the way refined itself to the point where everybody is profoundly moved by her work, it was Annemarie. And so, while she is many things to many people, for me, she is the example of someone who stuck to her artistic guns and produced until the end without regard for what the world thought, and as a result made something so much more useful to the world than most of what happens in the name of art. This is a song I wrote for my mom, who was an almost exact contemporary of Annemarie's and left us a couple of years ago.
Do you go? What do you see? I will follow, follow, follow. Life's a flower bloom to see. I will follow, follow. Take me to the park, my son, where you played as a boy. Him so high and we so small. Let's feed the squirrels on the wall. The clouds will run and hide. Watch them all flow by. Mother, you're floating in memories. What light you see, what tune you hear, I will follow, follow, follow. Life's a songbird in your ear. I will follow, follow. Help me find the way, my child. My past's a hazy cloud. Less real this moment than my dreams. I swim in circles in between. A little girl that cries watches through these eyes. Rage, rage against the dying light. Do not go gentle, do not go gentle. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, I will follow, follow. Mother, you drifting in twilight. You wander, mother,
Well, I'm going to tell kind of an unusual story, and I don't want to cry because it's not sad at all. I didn't see Annemarie kind of on purpose during her death, the last few months of her life, partly because we're dealing with our own family situation. It was more than I could take, and partly I didn't want to see her any differently than I have always seen her. And when she died, until I came here today, I didn't cry. But partly I didn't cry because I had an amazing experience of her, which I haven't told anybody. I haven't even told my husband, and he actually went to the bathroom, so he's not going to hear it. But I was taking a walk a week or two after she died, and I think I might have been thinking about her. I don't even know if I was thinking about her or not. And this has happened to me before with people after they die, but never to this extent. All of a sudden, her face just appeared in front of me so intensely that I had to stop walking. And she was so happy. I can't even tell you how happy she looked. It was just like, and she was like on the verge of laughing. It was like she was like, and her eyes were just like, she was so happy. She was like bursting with happiness. And it was like infectious. So I started laughing. And then I'm walking along, and I couldn't stop laughing. And I'm walking along the neighborhood like, and then I'd kind of get it under control, and her face would come back, and she'd laugh and make me laugh some more. And we went along this way for a couple of blocks. And she's very happy. She's just very happy. And and then I thought, oh, I can't wait to get home and tell Brad. And she said, no, don't, just sit with it for a while. Just sit with it. And ever since then, she's kind of with me a lot. And what she said, she didn't say it in so many words, but she's helping me to not always say everything the minute it comes into my head, which is the kind of person I am. And I thought, of all people to... And she said, yeah, but, I'm going to help you, So, so I wasn't even going to tell this story today because of that. And she was I asked her, should I tell it, should I not? And she was like, see how it goes. And so I decided to tell it. But I have felt so close to her since she died. It's amazing to me. I didn't expect it.
Woods Hall, summer of 1969, cot in the garage, mid-century modern architecture, abstract painting, wine in a real wine glass, dealer's choice poker for nickels and dimes, bonfires hanging out on the wall. Thank you for the hospitality, Annemarie. Thank you to the Mahler family.
My name is Dave Coleman. My son Gabe and I have the venue, Fine Arts and Gifts, in our gallery in Bloomington. And we opened that about 10 years ago, and it was not long after that through an interesting series of circumstances I met Annemarie. Someone brought in a painting that they wanted us to consider selling, and it was I don't see anything quite like it up there, but it was 3 cat faces, and it looked like the kind of painting that a child would enjoy. And it had the name Peter Clover on it. And I decided that I wanted to try to investigate that, and I went to the internet, and I finally found some guy in England named Peter Clover who denied knowing anything about it. And it was in our gallery on the wall for a couple of months, and someone came in and I said, I wish I could find out who painted that. And they said, I think that's Annemarie Mahler. And I said, well, where is she? Who is she? And he said, I'm not sure. I don't know. And I looked at the phone directory. I didn't find her. And I looked at the spelling of the name, and Andy and I sort of crossed paths in the late 60s. I practiced law, and he was into some things that might have caused him to... I thought he might recognize my name. I recognized his. And so I called him and I said, do you know who Annemarie Mahler is? And he said, it's my mother. And I thought, well, is she an artist? He said, yes. And you might notice that most of her paintings are unsigned. And that's a maddening thing for someone in the art business who's trying to find an artist. But she went beyond. Not only is it not signed, and so I called her, and I said, we have this painting, is it something? I described it, and she said it was probably something that she had done for her children's nursery. And I thought that was nice, and I asked her what she was doing, and it led to a conversation. She invited me to her home, which had, as others have said, an extraordinary collection of beautiful paintings on the walls, large paintings, small paintings, and she showed me this flat file cabinet that had hundreds more wonderful paintings. And I said, well, would you consider doing a show at the gallery? And she said, no one would come. And I said, why would you say that? She said, I have very strong opinions. And I said, well, your art is so beautiful. And basically, I think I talked her into it. And it was a wonderful experience, and people did come, of course. And it led to a relationship. And she would come to the gallery when she was in town, maybe once a week, usually on a Friday night, usually late, and get a glass of wine and just talk with us and tell us how she was doing. And Leah was a regular feature there. I think she liked the fact that we liked Leah. And Leah was welcome in the gallery as well. I talked with her a lot. And she was and is my role model for aging well. You just can't do it any better than she did. She was independent and strong and bright and inquisitive, loved life, and loved the people around her, and she was admired and admired others. But there's one thing I'll always remember about her, it was her eyes. The most bright, sparkling, beautiful eyes, and a beautiful woman. In talking about her art, she said to me, I paint the space between earth and sky. And I was young and in the art business, not for very long, young to the art business, not that young. And I thought about that, and a week later I said, what do you mean by that? I mean, almost all art deals with the space between earth and sky. And she said, how long did you think about that? There were things about Annemarie that I think the one thing, I'm Jewish, and I know that her experience leaving Austria shaped a lot of her life. I wish, since she paid a much greater price for her Jewishness than I ever did, I wish that it, on a spiritual level, had seemed to mean more to her than it did. She was not an observant religious person. She had a Jewish identity, a cultural and intellectual identity that I think she valued. And somehow, having paid so much, I sort of wish she had gotten more in return from that Jewish identity. She was a wonderful person. We'll miss her in the gallery. I own one of her paintings, and I own it through an interesting set of circumstances. A woman came into the gallery during the show and bought it for a significant price, and I went to Annemarie and wrote her a check for what the painting was worth, and interestingly, the woman came back about 2 weeks later and returned the painting, and I had to return the money. So not only do I have one of your mother's paintings, Andy, but I had to pay retail for it on top of it. And it's in my home above my fireplace, and I'll cherish it forever, as I will her memory. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Filiz Čicek. I didn't know Annemarie maybe as well as some of you, but I had few interactions that always made me very intrigued and very curious about her, and I really enjoyed any time that I spent with her. I am an artist and I teach art. It was in 2010. I had maybe 11, I had just left Tibetan Buddhist Center. I was living there to do an art show. and it had just come out, and David Haberman said, come down to Black Lazy Bear Farm. There's a reunion, Hartford reunion. I said, okay. And there was also a German artist, Monika Trott, in town, and so I wrote a review of her films for the writer, and I used to drive her around because she didn't have any way of going around. And I called her, I said, do you want to come to this farm? She says, no, I have another farm to go to. I'm going to interview an artist, and because she was a feminist filmmaker, she is. And I said, which farm? She said, oh, Lazy Blackbird. I was like, that's where I'm going. So I ended up driving Monika, and Annemarie welcomed us there. And she and I ended up just talking, taking a stroll. And she was telling all about the farm, and she was very, very proud of Andy and the farm and all that was happening there, and telling us how she and her husband, they escaped, they left Austria, and how they journeyed to America, which I think she tried to make it very simple, but it was obviously a very intense experience that was very much present with her all the time. That's the sense I had. And then she talked about her children a lot instead of her art. Years later, I think maybe 7 years later or something, it's always stayed with me, and I wanted to ask her, I said, how do you, balance being a mother with being an artist, being a wife? And she says, oh, children are such a drag. So I was surprised. I'm like, it was refreshing to hear that. But it's like, you have to feed them, you have to clean them, they clean. It's like you're in jail for so long. And I'm like, okay, I will reevaluate not having children, I guess. And so then she said, but oh, what a wonderful drag they are. They are hope for the future, and I wouldn't have it any other way. So I appreciated her as a feminist artist, and I very much see the history of women in art, where either they have to sign their names as men or they don't sign it so that they can get into galleries or museums. So I'm very happy that I got to meet her and had a very little but great experience. Thank you.
Well, friends, I see that the time is starting to get away from us. It's pretty close to 5 right now. So what we're going to do is I'm going to say a few words. My cousin is going to get a couple guitars. We're going to play a couple songs. And anybody who has more to say, and I hope many of you will, just let's move ourselves to the Blue Line Gallery. We need to be out of here at 5:30. It's 5, so we should be able to do it, although I am long-winded. And then we have a couple songs we want to do, one of which I wrote while lying next to my mother in her deathbed, and the other one, a final verse to the song came to me as I was lying next to Mom there. So this is something you don't get any practice for doing, although we did have a memorial for Mom in Paoli a little less than a month ago. But Barbara talked a little bit about her entry into this world. One thing she didn't mention was the fact that they had told Mom that she was going to have a third son. And Mom really wanted a daughter, but she was willing to try and reverse the miscarriage, even knowing it was going to be a third son, with the very high likelihood that her husband was going to be dead when she was raising these 3 children. But as it obviously turned out, it was a successful birth and a wonderful daughter. But my birth story is one that Mom recounted over and over, and I'm sure that some of you have heard this. Anybody who spent any time with Mom probably did hear it. Tony, I think, was a day and a half of labor. So that was something of an ordeal. But I was a half hour of labor. And she said before my eyes were even open, the nurse presented this tiny little infant to her, and this little baby wrapped his arms around her neck, not lightly, but a big hug, and pulled her close, and that was me. My first act, as you know, I'm quite the hugger. but I come by it honestly because it was the first thing I did when I was born, was a hug. And hugs mean so much to me. But we spend a lot of time thinking about what is the significance of death? What does it mean? What happens after death? What does this life mean? What is this space between birth and death? What is it all about? Each of us, it's the way I say it, is like a walking question mark. Why am I here? Why am I here? And then the lives we lead are the answer to that question. Now, some people don't even realize they're asking that question, but when you realize that your life is that question mark, it brings a certain lightheartedness, but also a certain determination to make the most of this time that we have. Well, we talk a lot about what happens after death. You know, Linda had a very clear experience with my mother after death. I remember when John Paul Dario died, I had something similar. We hadn't been that close, although we'd been good friends, but I remember he sort of appeared to me within a few days after his death, and it was really something as profound as what Linda described. But the other question we don't ever ask, our culture doesn't investigate or doesn't seem to have any interest, is where were we before we were born? If there's a presumption that there is some continuity after death, why would it miraculously start at that instant of conception? What was the force that brought us into being? Did we exist in any form before we were brought into being? And as I mentioned, I had a fairly profound, direct contact with my mother at the instant of my birth. But the instant of the birth is somewhat secondary to the instance of being carried inside this other human being's belly for 9 months, being attached by an umbilical cord. That's a pretty profound relationship, and each one of us has one of those relationships. You know, and that is something that speaks to, why was I born? What was it, what were my parents thinking? And it's really, and when you think about that. Think about your parents. What was the nature of their experience in their lives at the time that they met, that they bonded, that they had sex? You know, I mean, that's a sort of unescapable fact that each of us is the result of a sexual act. And what was happening in their minds and in their hearts at that instant of connection between the spirit of the one being and the spirit of the other being that produces this third being. And that third being in each case is us, each of us individually. And I like to think that each of us is a reflection of the greatest hopes and dreams and fondest imaginings that those two individuals had in their hearts for how to make a better world. You know, it may have been something else. It may have just been, you know, the only person that would sleep with you at the end of, you know, at closing time at the bar. I don't know. But I think it's nicer to imagine that we carry these dreams and these hopes and these visions with us through life, and that in these very special instances of union, we produce something far greater than ourselves. And that then comes around sort of full circle, because Mom, you know, if we had a little more time, and maybe over at the gallery, I will tell the story of that final week of Mom's life. But on Sunday, I got this call at 7:30 in the morning, which was a time Mom often called, and we had put a phone by the bed because I hated having to jump up and run down and get to the phone. So there was a phone by the bed, and there it was. It rang at 7:30 in the morning. I was basically about to say, "Hi, Mom," but it was Maggie, and Maggie says, "Andy, your mother's unresponsive. What do I do?" You know, and long story short, she wound up in the emergency room. I get in the car, drive up to Bloomington as quickly as possible, make the calls to Tony and Barbie, "Get out here as quick as you can, Mom, stop." But she didn't die. They gave her a couple units of blood. They told her what the medical options were. She said, in so many words, "Fuck no, I'm not going through that. I am not going through any of that. I've had a great life. I've had a long life. I'm not going to have tubes stuck in me. I'm not going to be cut open. I'm not going to be helicoptered up to Indianapolis. If this is it, so be it. Take me home." But she couldn't go home on her own, so they had to take her back in the ambulance, but she got to be in her own home, in her own bed. Well, they had given her a couple units of blood in preparation for these other medical procedures that they could have done, these fairly dramatic interventions they could have done that she rejected. And the fact of the matter is, I think those 2 units of blood bought her 24 hours. Because she got home, she actually became fairly lucid. She laughed, we shared a meal, we told stories, we sat around her bed together. She started talking about what she was going to be doing next week, next month, 6 months from now. She was really suddenly, she's like, I'm back in it. I'm back in it. You know, if this is available to me, I'm in it. And then so I got to go home that night. I'd only been home for maybe half an hour, and Tony calls and says, Andy, you got to come back. She's gone. So I got back in the car, her car, I'd been using because my car was in the shop. And it usually takes me about an hour and 10 minutes to get from our door to Mom's door. I made it in 40 minutes. 40 minutes. I was very fortunate, got all the green lights except for one, but there was nobody coming, so I figured if the state police showed up behind me, I was going to do a 911 call, say, please tell the officer behind me I got to get to my mom's. And I'm not stopping. But it didn't happen. I got there. And as Barbara said, she was in a bad way. And she had a lot of internal bleeding. That's what killed her. And in fact, what killed her was most likely the naproxen, the Aleve that she was taking to deal with the pain, the continuous pain she was in for the months prior to her death. Naproxen is known to cause ulcers, and she had a bleeding ulcer, most likely, but she never did the scope to find out what the cause of the bleeding was, but that's very likely to have been it. Anyway, there was a fairly traumatic period when she was in enormous pain and great discomfort. As Barbara said, this is the worst day of my life, she said. But she got through that. She really did. And then we had this magical period, extraordinarily magical period. Maggie and Maggie's sister-in-law, Jamie, were there, and they were sort of hovering towards the outside of the room, but they were there in case we needed any assistance from them. There'd been a hospice nurse there. We just signed up for hospice that day, so that was one of the shortest hospices on record, although I suspect that happens fairly often. And then there's Tony, Barbie, and me, my dog Digby, and Leah. Leah at the foot of the bed, Digby on Mom's feet and Barbara's feet. And what's interesting about this bedroom is they bought that house 50 years ago. I'm 66, they bought it when I was 16. That was my bed. She was dying in my bed, the bed that had been mine. And you know what 16-year-old boys think about when they're lying in their beds, you know? And so here's my mother lying in my bed. And then after I left to go to IU, it was Barbara's bed. So Barbara's lying on one side of her in her bed. I'm lying on the other side of her in my bed, and she's lying there in the bed that she shared with Leah. So there's all these sort of strange resonances, harmonies, harmonics that are going on. And my feeling about the nature of the human experience is that it's just a vast dream, just one dream among an infinite number of dreams. I do not believe that there is such a thing as death. That's my personal belief. I believe that consciousness can be neither created nor destroyed, that consciousness is ultimately indestructible, but it's transformative. I can go into more detail, but I won't. I will say that my sense of what happens when you die is that you just wake up into another dream. And any dream while you're in that dream seems completely real and internally self-consistent and undeniably all the reality that you know at that time until you wake up from that dream into what we call reality. But why is reality any more real than the dream that you woke up from? So anyway, let me just, Mark's got backstage, he's got a couple guitars. I'm going to sing a couple songs, then we'll sing another song to wrap it up, and then we'll all head over to the Blue Line Gallery. And if you didn't get a chance to speak yet, and you've got something you'd like to share, please head on over there. We've got lots of food over there, we've got wine over there. And those of you who saw the show of Mom's Art in August, this is an entirely new show. It's going to be a different show up for the entire month of September. So even if you saw the show in August, head over to Blue Line because it's all new material. And There are 3 songs, each of which has a very easy chorus. The third song has words to the chorus. The first 2 songs, the choruses are just sort of vocalizations, and I encourage you to vocalize along with them. They're quite simple. In fact, the first one is... I lay with my mother on her deathbed. The last words she spoke still ring in my head. In grace and in glory, I soon will be wed. I love you, were the last words she said. I danced with my mother on her deathbed. She said, this is my first time, I'll be gentle, I said. So out onto the dance floor, she followed, I led. We danced beneath the stars just like Ginger and Fred. She raised us, she sweat, cried, and bled. Each night at the table, our whole family she fed. And when we got tired, stories to us she read. Beautiful stories she made up in her head. And every night a different dream, and every dream it ends like this. I dream I hold you in my arms, I dream I wake you with a kiss. I go to sleep and I'm dreaming a whole other world into being. There's a whole lot of worlds to be me in these worlds where I go and I dream. Then I wake up, I'm still dreaming. There's a whole brand new day that I'm seeing. There's a whole brand new way to be me in this dream we call reality. so precious true. You loving me, me loving you, 'cause we're just one, being two. Now we'll do one more song and we'll ask y'all, anybody wants to sing along, you can come up here and sing with us or sing from out there. This, that Get Over It song I think many of you know. And the sad thing is that the path in Oregon, where I wrote this first verse to the song about the tree falling across your path, the Forest Service just got in there and clear cut the area. So, that's the word. When a tree falls across your path, get over it. When your life falls apart at last, get over it. When the fickle-fingered handshake of love leaves you holding an empty glove, and you're all alone and longing for love, get over it. But get over it, get over it, get over it, get over it. When you're all alone and longing for love, get over it. Now when you're not playing with a full deck, just deal with it. It's just a game, dealer's choice, what the heck? So whose deal is it? When you're the joker, you might play a king. You can't leave, you can't lose, you can't win. So you might as well say, deal me in. And get over it. But get over it, get over it, get over it, get over it. You can't leave, you can't lose, you can't win. So get over it. This is the one I was looking at Mom when I would sing this verse. You say your parents made a mess raising you, so what else is new? I suppose you blame society too, 'cause it wasn't you who was to blame for all those mistakes. When you've got a horn who needs brakes, and it'll take just as long as it takes to get over it. But get over it, get over it, get over it, get over it. It's gonna take just as long as it takes to get over it. Now there's a river running down to the sea, just flow with it. There's that person you were planning to be, let go of it. From the MNOPQRST 10-987-6543 to whatever it happens to be, get over it. But get over it, get over it, get over it, get over it, whatever it happens to be. Get over it, but get over it, get over it, get over it, get over it. If you want to set yourself free, hey, you looking at me? Get over it. Hey! Thank you everybody for coming out, but please join us over at the Blue Line Gallery. If you don't know where it is, you just go out here to either Walnut or College, go down one block to 4th Street. It's on 4th Street between College and Morton, on the north side of Morton. I mean, 4th Street. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. See you over there. There's plenty of food and wine to be had.